So what are the two, and there really are only two concepts that you have to know, and one of them has more to it, but I'll explain that you have to know when it comes to this solving angle stuff. Even if you start getting triangles involved or super complex picture or figures, it's just really two things. Start there and then build on that, which I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. What's one of them? Give me one of them. It's not in this picture. That one isn't. But that is going to be one of them. What's the other one? We'll come back to that. What's the other concept that I told you about? It was the first one I did. Nope, had to do with when you see an X, two lines cross.
Oh, any side.
But what are they called? So what are the names of those that are equal? They are congruent, so that's another word for equal, but what's the name of the angle? It starts with a V. Vertical angle. So I don't care about definitions, but the reason I say that is because you may have a problem where it just tells you they're vertical angles, and you need to understand what that means. So in vertical angles, you will see two. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to figure out how. I guess I don't really need to erase it on the screen. It's good. You will see two dead straight lines that cross. Now, it's not always going to be that easy where it's just the two lines. As many of you saw yesterday in IXL, some of those figures got really complex, and they had about 5 or 6 different rays going in all different directions. Sometimes there was an X that was formed by dead straight lines. Sometimes there wasn't. So you got to be able to figure out, like it might have been something like this, and then it could have been, and this I don't think was in there, but it could have been a triangle, and then there could have been another ray that like came out that direction, and all kind of stuff could be going on. You've got to be able to figure out where is the X, where is the dead straight. Sometimes they had stuff like this too. I just saw this one today. Sometimes they had stuff like that. Bunch of rays coming out of one side. Again, there is an X in there. The X is wherever two dead straight lines cross. So what you can say about that is, I know what. Say it again, whoever said it. I think we had 2 people saying it. What is important? Why is that X important? What does it tell us? Well, say it with more detail, because when you say they're both equal, there's all kind of stuff going on there. What's divided by? So what are vertical angles? Across from each other. So the angles, now I got a whole, so here's a vertical, or here's an angle, right? That's an angle. Pretty easy to see that angle right there. That's an angle. But across from it, what do I have? I got a whole bunch of stuff across from it. You have to be able to figure out what is the angle that's equal to that other angle across from it. It's the angle that uses kind of the same lines, like whatever the two lines are crossing, you see where I have it highlighted, right? These two lines don't cross, they don't keep going, so I can't use those. So I use the two lines that we're crossing to make the other angle. These 3 angles would have to add up to that. So these 3 angles, let's call them 1, 2, 3. Those 3 angles would add up to this big angle here. So you could say, and this is actually a problem I saw today, that's why I'm drawing like that. You could say if you knew what was in these 3 angles, and let's say this is 140, you could say angle 1 plus angle 2 plus angle 3 have to add up to be 140. Because this is a vertical angle with 140, so that whole thing has to be 140, and then angle 1 plus angle 2 plus angle 3 add up to be this angle. And again, that's kind of using both concepts. It uses the vertical angles concept, but it also uses the second concept, which is little angle plus little angle equals the big angle. In this case, it's actually little angle plus little angle plus little angle equal the big angle. I'll go over another simpler version of that in a second. But again, vertical angles is the first thing you look for. You're looking for an X. And it's got to be two dead straight lines. This is not an X. That's not an X. If that one of those lines doesn't go straight through in the same direction, if it changes directions, like this one changes directions, that's not vertical angles. They are not all equal, or the two across from each other are not equal. It's got to be a dead straight set of lines that form an exact X in order to have vertical angles. All right, so that's not the principle in here because there's no X, right? I don't see an X anywhere in there. So what is the principle then? And there's really only one, but this one has multiple parts to it. I just said it a minute ago when I was talking about these. What's the other principle? And I don't necessarily expect you to know this exactly. I don't know, just tell me what you think. Give me something. Just give me something that you know is true. That's not vertical angles. Taking along. What else is true? I mean, you can use that figure because that's the one I'm on now, but what's true about that figure? Is it? Did I tell you it's bisecting? Can't assume that. I would have to tell you it's bisecting, or I would have to show you in some way that the angles were equal. That means it's bisecting. I'm telling you, even though I didn't say it bisects, I'm telling you this angle is equal to that angle by those little marks. That's what those marks. I don't have anything that tells me that up there. I can't say the angles are equal. But what can I say? Got those. Thank you. Yeah, what side? No, that one I was just showing you that would be bisecting. But it's actually I'm gonna leave it. It is the same thing. I'm gonna draw it differently though now. So that would mean bisecting if I gave you that, but let's say I didn't, but let's say I still drew a figure in like this. This concept that I'm about to talk about, it's the same really for both pictures. Now we know a little, or we can assume a little bit more in the top picture than we can in the bottom until I give you more information. But same exact concept that you need to remember. Vertical angles is one of them, and then this is really the only other one. I shouldn't say only other one, but like the main other one. What's true about those angles in that top figure? Hopefully somebody got the equation. I hope somebody got the equation right. Phone should be up. I said create equation and solve for it. Excellent. I want you to tell me what is true, and that if you can tell me the equation you should have created, tell me the equation. You can tell me something you know is true in that top figure, tell me what you know is true in that top figure. We said that they're not equal. I can't say that they're equal because I didn't tell you in any way they're equal. We can say, and it's the same thing really down here. Now I'll give you a number though, now that we've come up with that. This is the only other concept, although this concept has like some more pieces to it, which we'll go over now. This is kind of, so those of you that were here yesterday, you saw a lot of complementary, supplementary stuff that we really hadn't gone over yet. That's kind of what I'm doing right now. It's the same concept though as what we learned. If I have a big angle, so if I have a bigger angle, so in this case, that's the bigger angle, right? If I take that and if I split it into two angles, so I'm saying I'm splitting it with this ray right here. It kind of made a line for me. That's pretty good. You didn't do that with the yellow. So if I split that yellow angle into two angles, what's true about the two little angles? Yeah, it's the same thing we did in line segments. If I take a big angle, which is a 75-degree angle, that's what I'm telling you here. The big angle is 75 degrees. If I split it into two, here's my original big angle. If I split it into two angles with my, I don't see where it is, but I'll pick another one. If I split that into two angles, I didn't change the measure of the big angle. I didn't open these up or close them anymore. I just made two angles out of it. So therefore, the two little angles have got to still add up to that big angle. So we would write an equation for that bottom one, and we'd say angle 1 plus angle 2 has to equal the big angle, which we know is 75 now that I just wrote that in. It's the same exact concept up here. I took a big angle, only now the big angle I created is what? If I took an angle and I opened it up to this, what is that? Yeah, it's called a straight angle, or it's really just a line. We said a line is 180 degrees. And then I took that line, and this is harder to do because it's harder to hold the ruler straight when it's like that. If I take that line and I split that line into two angles, just like I did here, those two angles still have to add up to 180. But it's still little plus little equals big. That principle didn't change. I have to know that the big angle is 180 degrees because it's a straight line. But again, little plus little equals big. If it's not vertical angles, it's little plus little equals big. That's really, and then you may have to understand what is the measure of the big angle, and in this case, it's 180. So my equation, which gets you a passing grade, if you don't remember that, setting up the equation in geometry for the most part is going to get you a passing grade. I need to understand the first angle is 2x plus 15. Doesn't matter that I got variables and numbers. I told you don't get freaked out by the fact that you got variables and numbers in here. Even if both angles are supposed to be equal to each other, one may have different variables than the other. I told you $10 is $10 in a lot of different ways. $10 might be just 110, it might be 2 5s, it might be a 5 and some 5 1s, it might be some change thrown in there. It's still $10. If angles are equal to each other, it doesn't matter what variables and numbers are in each angle, they're still equal to each other. We're just representing that number in a different way with different variables and different numbers. Now here they're not equal to each other, we're adding them together. And then when we add them together, like we just said, they have to equal 180. Anybody get an answer for X? I do. Yeah. So is that what everybody got? Anybody else? 33? All right. I'm going to solve it out real quick for those of you that didn't get it. I need to combine like terms. So I combine the X's. If you're still struggling with solving equations, you need to work on your algebra. You can do that in the new tool, Alex. I'm going to show that. IXL will sort of help you because they'll show you how they solve it out also. So when you're doing that, if you're getting the setup correct and you understand that, but you're struggling on the algebra, just hit show solution or need help or something and see how they solve it out. And eventually you'll start to see the algebra, hopefully. So that'd be 5x plus 15 equals 180. That's now a two-step equation. So I subtract 15 on both sides. Whatever I do on one side, I have to do to both sides. So 5x equals 165, I believe. So then I divide by 5. 165. So I divide by 5 on both sides, and that gives me 33. So yeah, X was 33. So I did that fast, I know. Remember, it's recorded though. I don't really have time to show you a bunch of algebra in here because we got enough geometry to go through. Oh, we're not doing, if you haven't noticed, we're not doing the district quiz thing you were supposed to do. We still will have to do it, but they said we didn't have to do it by this Thursday. And we're definitely not through all the material, so we're going to wait. Any questions on that? I'm gonna show you one more thing real quick, and then you're just gonna practice in IXL. I reset, your score should be reset. If it's not, let me know. Because you need to know how long it's gonna take you to go from 0 to 70. Because on Thursday, I'm gonna reset it. Or Thursday, actually. Well, actually, I'll wait. So you need to know, am I gonna get to 70 with enough time to still do the quiz? So today will be kind of a test run on that. Any questions on anything on that before I kind of show you the next concept? Last concept. All right. So we're going to see, you're going to see a bunch of problems with complementary and supplementary in there. You just need to understand the definitions. Complementary means that the two angles add up to 90. Now they can show you that in a lot of different ways. It might be that they put the little right angle symbol in there. I'm going to do a new page for that. So if they do something like this, you know you've got a 90-degree angle, right? That's what that little guy means in the corner. And then they may say, let's split that into two angles, and they would just give you something like this. So you have to know, okay, well, again, I told you if it's not vertical angles, it's little plus little equals big. Little angle, the two little angles, the bottom one is the littlest angle. So little plus little. That's the first angle, 3x plus 10. Second angle is x plus 2. So little plus little equals big, but what's the big angle? Measure of the big angle. So that's one way they're going to do it. And I didn't see all the problems, so I don't even know if they're doing this other way, but what they could do is they could give you two totally separate angles. They could give you this angle here, right? And they could give you this angle here. I don't know, say something like that. That's probably not a great representation. And they could say these are two complementary angles. So one is x degrees, one is 4 degrees, which is not, they're not even close to 4 degrees. That's not. Here, we'll fix it and make it more realistic. 14 degrees. So they may not give you a right angle symbol. They may just tell you those two angles are complementary. What does that mean? It means they add to 90. It's the same thing. It's just that they're not in one single big angle. They're just two totally separate angles. But if they tell you they're complementary, it's still the same thing. X plus 14 equals 90. Then you'd solve for x. So sometimes they'll just give it to you in the figure and you have to know based on the little right angle symbol. Sometimes they'll just tell you they're complementary and then you just set them, add them together and set that equal to 90. Same thing with supplementary. Supplementary means what? That's complementary. Supplementary means they add up to what? 180. So it's the same concept. If they tell you it's supplementary, if they give you two separate angles, like I already have two separate angles here, if they say these two angles are supplementary, that means you add them together and they equal 180, like in the upper right. So I would say, okay, well, the measure of this angle is 2x plus 15. The measure of this angle is 3x plus 20. Well, if I'm told they're supplementary, that means if I add them together, they'll equal 180. And the concept is the same, and you kind of already know this. Those two angles are supplementary because they add up to 180. So they didn't tell me those two are supplementary. I knew because they were part of the same line that they added up to 180. That makes them supplementary. So sometimes they may just ask you, are they supplementary? And you need to know if they sit on the same line, So this angle and this angle sit on that same line. They are supplementary because they add up to 180. So the questions can go both ways. They can either tell you they're supplementary and then you have to solve, or they can ask you if they are, and you have to understand if they add up to 180, then they are. They might just give you if you do any of the easier codes, so that VZU and 7P7 are much easier, they may just ask you this. They may say, are these angles supplementary? So if I have those two measures, are those supplementary angles? One angle is 110, one is 60. True or false? Yes or no? Are they supplementary? Are they? What do they need to add up to be supplementary? Oh, that was values. So what do they have to add up to be supplementary? So are they supplementary? Yeah, if they don't add up to 180, then your answer is no. So if they give you actual numbers, you just add them together and see if it equals 180. If they give you a line, you would know, yeah, they are because they sit on the line. Or the reverse is if they tell you they're supplementary, then you know they need to add up to 180 and you can solve. So that's your super fast version of complementary and supplementary. I did it longer in the other class, but then they just kept seeing them and I wound up answering questions out there anyway when you're doing IXL. So I want you to go into IXL. You should see that your score is zeroed out. If not, somebody let me know that the score is didn't. I tried to zero it out. I hope that I did it correctly. I want you to have a true test of how long it takes you to get to 7. You have way more time today than you did yesterday, so this should be a indication of whether or not you're good to go for. So we're doing the quiz on Thursday. Wait, I'm sorry. You guys will be Friday. Well, shoot. God, how am I going to do that with you guys? You may have to get to a certain score on Thursday, so you'll do the IXL on Thursday, and then you'll do the quiz. So I may lower your score because you won't have as long to do it on Thursday, and then you'll have more time to do the quiz on Fridays. I have to figure that part out. But regardless, today and tomorrow you're practicing for your IXL and then quiz on Thursday and Friday, depending on how I work it out. So, what I was going to say is, if you think you're in pretty good shape, you can jump straight into this one. This is the hard one that you were doing yesterday. Why you didn't give many points in this one. If you want to practice these first, I wouldn't spend forever in those. Like, don't worry about getting to 70 in those. But just to kind of get a better feel for complementary and supplementary, I think both of these are about that. And you can do those for a little while if you want to get a better feel for those lessons. But it's like, don't spend more than 20 minutes on those two. You need to get into that top one, AKB. So the way you go into IXL is you go into your Clever, click on IXL. I'm going to show it really quickly while I'm recording. It's the same one you did yesterday, but I've reset the scores because we didn't have as much time yesterday. I want to see how fast you can get to 7.